Welcome in to another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I'm your host for this amazing little half hour where we're going to talk all things motorsports. And on today's show, we're going to recap the three big races that were happening over this past weekend. We had NASCAR all the way on Homestead. We had Formula One in China. We had IndyCar over there at Thermal. And we're going to talk about all of that coming up on today's show. We're also going to discuss the races that are coming up in coming weeks, as well as NASCAR's upcoming weekend in Martinsville. So be sure to stay tuned for the rest of this episode because we've got a lot of content to cover. But before we go ahead and get started, I'm going to introduce myself again. My name is Rob Peeters, and I am your host for this show. You can find me on social media by searching at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS 33. And remember to subscribe to WTHR on YouTube and download the WTHR Plus app to get brand new episodes of The Racing Report as soon as they are posted. All right, let's go ahead and talk about some of the news and notes from this past weekend, because the first thing we're going to talk about is Formula One, and there's the biggest story in all the panic going around right now, and that is that Red Bull is already considering and likely has already made the decision to replace Liam Lawson with Yuki Tsunoda as Max Verstappen's teammate. Now, this comes after just 2 races where Lawson has competed alongside Verstappen, and he's failed to score points in both of those races, recording a DNF in Australia and then basically finishing, 18th or something in China. So some big shakeups there. Now, it's expected. Again, this has not been formally confirmed yet, so keep that in mind. Now, perhaps by the time you're watching this, it has been formally confirmed. Either way, all of this is crazy, and it would be the earliest that Red Bull has ever replaced a driver at its main team. I believe the previous shortest time was Danny Kvyat, but now just 2 races that Liam Lawson gets before he is kicked back down to the RB. Now, it's expected that that should be just a simple driver swap. Tsunoda goes into Red Bull, Liam goes back down to the RB, but anything could happen. I heard Franco Colapinto even being thrown out there as a possibility to jump into the absent RB, and maybe Lawson is just done and gone from the team altogether. That would definitely be something big if that were to happen. Now, again, all of that has not yet been formally announced. We don't know all the details yet, so keep watching here when we do get those details, because the next Formula One race isn't for a couple of weeks. Now, the next big piece of F1 news, and this is insane to me, we talked about it a little bit last week, a couple weeks ago too, is that apparently the FIA has now confirmed, they talked to motorsport.com in China, and they confirmed that they are, quote-unquote, seriously evaluating shortening the 2026 engine formula in favor of a potential turn to V10 engines, potential to return to V10 engines. Now, this comes as Mohammed Ben Sulayem was talking about it, saying, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we just racing V10s with sustainable and renewable fuels, which is possible, but now the FIA is saying, yeah, no, we're actually considering such a thing. And this news has rightfully angered some of the F1 power unit constructors like Audi, who've been working on their new power unit for quite some time. Remember, they're set to take over the Sauber team, the Kick Sauber team, coming up next year in 2026, and they're going to have their own power unit, their own Audi power unit that they've been developing for the last couple of years, and they're going to put that into their F1 car. And now they're saying, well, what do you mean? We just developed this V6 platform hybrid and everything. Well, now you're saying you're going back to V10s? What are you talking about? So as cool as this is, it's obviously rightfully so getting a lot of pushback, because, we got Honda. Honda is building their own engines again, too. Ford is building their own engines. So we've got at least 3 new engine manufacturers coming into Formula One to develop power units for next year. And all of that could go up in smoke. Now, again, this is all tentative. Likely, if this did go through, I would be very surprised if this did not happen maybe until 2028. So likely what we could be seeing is Formula One says, yes, these are going to be the 2026 and 2027 rule formula, engine formula, everything like that. But for 2028, we're going to go back to V10s. Again, I don't have any there's no confirmation of this. This is all speculative rumors going on right now, but it is interesting to keep in mind of, because the FIA president has been saying this, and now official FIA spokespeople are also reiterating this. So it could have more of a kernel of truth to it than maybe we specifically think right now. But either way, we're going to have to keep monitoring this, because I know there's a lot of Formula One fans who would love a return to V10 engines, myself included. But obviously, we'll have to see what those teams and engine manufacturers push back on, and what kind of timeline we could be looking at for an F1 V10 revival coming up here in the coming years. All right, let's talk about IndyCar news now, because we have to get to all of this that's going on. And we just had the race, the first ever points race at the Thermal Club this past weekend. And Racer is reporting that IndyCar and the Thermal Club are actually weighing their options now for 2026. I think a lot of people, myself included, kind of expected the Thermal Club to just kind of be a placeholder event until they maybe got a different race in there, maybe a better race, or at the very least, it was just a placeholder until they went to this new Arlington street race that they've got planned or going around Cowboy Stadium. Apparently, no. Now we're seeing, according to Racer, that if the two sides can indeed work out an agreement for 2026, what will likely happen is the series will use a different layout next year. So instead of using the about 3 mile-ish long circuit that they have now, they probably increase it to about a 4-mile circuit, and then bring in additional grandstands to hopefully give people better viewing mounds, viewing spots, or perhaps even some additional, cheaper admission for some fans. Now, again, this is all speculative. This is all tentative right now. But if this is what Racer is reporting that if that deal can be worked out where Thermal can stay on the IndyCar schedule, that is likely what we'll be seeing. We won't be going to the same track that they went to this past weekend. So keep that in mind. And now, as we move on into this next piece of news, this next piece of news is very, very interesting for me when we just talk about this, because it's a great little segue into this. But Fox Sports broadcast of the Thermal Grand Prix got a viewership of just 704,000 people on Sunday. Now, that is at 3 p.m., which is set to be the golden hour of sports broadcasting on the weekend. Usually, if you could get 3 p.m. on a Sunday, you're going to maximize your potential viewers. That did not happen, because remember, here's how many people St. Petersburg got. And this St. Petersburg was on at noon on a Sunday. And it pulled in almost 1.5 million viewers. Okay, so it was actually, the actual number here is 1,417,000 viewers tuned in to see the St. Petersburg Grand Prix. But half of that, a little under half of that just didn't even at all tune in for the Thermal Club. Now, this was interesting to note too, because if you were watching that event down there in Thermal, you know that the broadcast cut out for about 20 laps and 20 minutes, around lap 26, and didn't come back until about lap 40. Now, that was apparently due to an electrical problem in the Fox production trailer. That's what their social media account said. But even then, obviously, the broadcast switching over briefly to air the NASCAR race at Homestead, which was happening concurrently, could that have had something to do with it? Likely. It was just simply the fact that it it was on at the same time as NASCAR at Homestead. NASCAR at a very, very popular racetrack. There could be a number of reasons why this rating for Thermal Club was so dismal, but I really find it hard for IndyCar to keep trying to sell Thermal Club as an event that fans will want to watch. I mean, it's not like most normal fans can even afford to go to this race. It'd probably be cheaper, and I'm not kidding you. I haven't done the full math, but it likely would be cheaper to get on a plane and fly from Indianapolis to Long Beach and go watch the Long Beach weekend than it would be to probably do the same thing at Thermal. I don't know. I haven't done the math, but it wouldn't surprise me given the high barrier to entry for tickets that you see with this event. So IndyCar, again, thinking about returning to Thermal. The two sides are in discussions, but that rating, that TV rating is bad. It's not good. It's definitely not good. So we'll have to see where that goes. Meanwhile, in IndyCar, speaking of the fallout from the Thermal Club, IndyCar has fined Andretti Global's number 26 team, which is Colton Herta's team, $25,000 and docked him an additional 10 owner's points before failing post-race tech inspection after an, quote, incorrect assembly of the car's front suspension was found. So some big championship implications there for Colton Herta and Andretti Global. Now, as we talk about the final piece of IndyCar news today, racers also reporting that veteran race car designer and engineer Tino Belli has been put in charge of updating the appearance of the new Dallara chassis that's meant to arrive in 2027 or 2028. Now, I don't exactly know what kind of designs that's going to be, but according to that racer article, the original design was quite underwhelming when presented to team owners late last year, and so now it looks like they're going back to the drawing board with Tino Belli and hopefully constructing a much better looking next generation of IndyCar race cars. So we'll have to see what comes out of that. Now, in the world of NASCAR, let's go ahead and get into that because, as we've talked about, we've been talking about it literally since we started going on the air last year with the Racing Report. The NASCAR lawsuit has a new update. Representatives from 2311 and FRM, Front Row Motorsports, said that NASCAR's countersuit is, quote, an act of desperation and asked for the case to be dismissed. The filing claims that NASCAR, not the original case, but the countersuit to be dismissed. The filing claims that NASCAR's counterclaim is quote-unquote retaliatory and, quote, does not allege the facts necessary to state a claim. Now, Michael Jordan, through a spokesperson, sent word to the Associated Press saying that Curtis Polk, who is the representative here, speaks for him and that Michael Jordan views any attack on Polk as, quote, personal. So this is really getting deep. This is getting very, very messy as it continues to work its way through the courts. Again, the trial for itself is not still scheduled for December, but all of these things are coming out now. Again, like I said a couple of weeks ago, what we're probably going to be seeing with the developments of this case is going to be a lot of lawyers, a lot of representatives making statements that are very against the other party. NASCAR is going to be probably claiming a lot of statements that allege FRM and 2311 are doing things that are anti-competitive and vice versa. They are going to 2311 and FRM are going to continue to note that NASCAR is also doing anti-competitive business practices, and it's just very interesting to see just how much back and forth we're really seeing amongst these two parties, as it seems like almost every week or every other week we're getting some kind of new nugget, new court filing that's been reported about this, and I'm really curious to see what is the boiling point. What happens when we finally get to that lawsuit date, or do we get to a point where both sides are able to settle? I don't even see that happening. The way that this is going about, the way that two representatives of the two teams and as well as NASCAR are going out at it with one another, I'm really curious to see what the trial is going to look like for this in December and how fast such a trial could take, because, you know, let's say hypothetically the trial still goes on and we're into Daytona testing, we might even be into getting ready for the Clash, and this trial could still be going on. So just keep watching here, keep watching the Race Report, because every time we have a new update on the NASCAR lawsuit, we are going to bring it to you right here. Now, into some new NASCAR news, some extra NASCAR news. Beard Motorsports has announced that they are returning to the Cup Series next month at Talladega with driver Anthony Alfredo and sponsor Fortify Business Solutions. So Fast Pasta getting some more Cup experience. Remember, he's running in the Xfinity Series this year full time as well. And then if you remember this name, you've probably watched a lot of ARCA East and West, K&N East and West races in your time. Takuma Koga is going to be driving for Joey Gase Motorsports in the Xfinity Series coming up in July at Dover and then at Portland in late August. So good to see Takuma Koga getting some Xfinity Series experience there. So good news for him. And then finally here, the last piece of NASCAR news we have before we take a break is going to be that the inaugural truck race at Lime Rock Park has a new name. It has a name, I should say, an official sponsor. It's going to be called the Liuna 150 at Lime Rock Park. So getting ready for that. I'm excited for when that comes. I can't wait for it. Lime Rock Park is one heck of a track, and it'll be cool to see those trucks slinging it around down there, as well as the ARCA Series. The ARCA Series is going to be making an appearance there as well. All right. That is it for the news segment of this show. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to recap all of the races that happened this past weekend and look ahead to the upcoming races in NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One, Supercars, IMSA, all that jazz. So don't go anywhere. Stick it right here. You're watching The Racing Report. And welcome back to The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. We just covered the news, and if you're just joining us, there was a decent amount of it, but a lot more to talk about when it comes to the races that happened this weekend. Formula One was in China for the Chinese Grand Prix. It was the first sprint race weekend of the year. Lewis Hamilton came out and won his first race for Ferrari in that sprint race, but then proceeded to be disqualified from the main Grand Prix because it was found that his underplates had excessive skid wear. Meanwhile, his teammate Charles Leclerc was also disqualified for being a whole kilogram underweight. Double retirement, double disqualification for Ferrari, but a double podium for McLaren. McLaren, Oscar Piastri dominated that race, won it handedly. Lando Norris finishes second. So now both McLaren drivers have won a race already in 2025, and the points battle is getting pretty spicy. I know it's only been 2 races, obviously, so anything can happen. But I'm curious to see what happens here as we go forward. Obviously, Leclerc wasn't the only driver that was disqualified for having their car underweight. Pierre Gasly in the Alpine was also disqualified from Sunday's Chinese Grand Prix for having his car be a kilogram underweight. If you watch this race, though, I think it's very clear to me that a change needs to be done at Red Bull anyway. And maybe not so much with the driver, but it's very clear to me that car is a pig, okay? Verstappen is clearly struggling. Yes, he is second in points. You can look at that and say, okay, yeah, Verstappen, nah, he's probably fine. He's going to be okay, right? Here's the thing that you got to keep in mind. Verstappen should probably be winning these races, and it shouldn't be that much of a blowout for McLaren. If you are Red Bull, you have to look at that, and you have to say, all right, well, where's our car losing speed? Where's our car losing downforce? Where is it losing grip in these corners? And really have to work on that. Now, again, car's already developed. Car's already there. You're going to have to throw some big time changes at it. You're going to have to invest a lot of more money in car development to really get this car to work out. And right now, despite the fact that it might not be maybe as fast as the main Red Bull, those RBs definitely look like they handle a lot better. So I'm curious to see what ends up happening with Yuki Tsunoda in the Japanese Grand Prix, his home Grand Prix, when he likely gets moved up to that Red Bull car. How is he going to perform compared to the RB? Because I'll be curious to see that metric. Because if Tsunoda struggles in the same regard as Lawson does, I really think at that point you have to just blame the car. Because Max Verstappen is Max Verstappen. He's a generational talent. He's going to do things behind the wheel of a race car that you didn't think were possible, which means he could probably take a pig of a race car and drive it up to a podium. But he's still struggling to get those podiums. It's not like it's a foregone conclusion that Verstappen is going to win the race, finish second, or finish third. He's really having to work for these podiums. And I think that's going to play into how Red Bull is going to fare in the Constructors' Championship. If this move plays out and Tsunoda is able to get some points, that may help. But the question then becomes is how big is that gap going to be from Tsunoda to Verstappen? Because right now the gap is about 20 cars, about 18, 19, or, between 15 and 18 cars between Verstappen and Lawson now. But again, Liam Lawson is a rookie with a lot of raw talent. So throwing a rookie into a car that's not necessarily built for them, not necessarily built with the best speed in mind, and saying, hey, buddy, why aren't you competing with Max Verstappen? I don't know what Red Bull really expected. And I don't really know what they're going to expect with Tsunoda. I think they're going to get something better with Tsunoda. But is it going to be better by that much? What is the gap still going to be to Verstappen? I'd be surprised if in qualifying it wasn't still, about maybe a second, maybe half a second in terms of how far off those teammates could be. Not saying that Tsunoda wouldn't probably finish in the points. I think that he would, but then again, I think that he would be fine finishing in the points if he was still driving for the Racing Bulls. So that is for Formula One right now. We've got a couple of weekends to wait. We got April 6th until the Japanese Grand Prix comes around. So just a couple of weeks off, but then we start another triple header, 3 straight weekends of Formula One racing. So get ready for that coming up here in a couple of weeks, starting with the Japanese Grand Prix. Now let's talk about IndyCar. Because in IndyCar, I really feel like it's important for us to address the elephant in the room. This was not a good race. This wasn't. Now, you could say on-track passing, okay, maybe it was up. And you can say, yeah, you had some cool battles here between, Lundgaard, Palou, Award, Palou. Yeah, okay, you had some good battles there. But in general, the race was not that good. And mainly, a lot of teams and drivers were really struggling to figure out what the right strategy was. Yes, that kind of made it for a little bit more interesting, but again, this is a club racetrack in a gated community. It's not necessarily, it wasn't built with passing zones in mind. It wasn't built to really be a circuit that professional racing series run on a regular basis. And that's what you had here. Now, again, don't get me wrong. That battle between Palou and Award toward the end of the race where Palou ends up winning, good battle. I honestly was surprised that Palou's red tires, alternate tires, lasted as long as they did. I kind of expected around 3-ish, 4 laps to go, those cars to stop losing their grip. Maybe Pato started to close the gap just a little bit. That did not happen. Palou's tires held up, and he was able to basically just drive away from from Award like it was nothing. Pato Award was probably a little bit upset after the race because he believes that, maybe some of his Chevrolet affiliated teammates didn't do as much blocking for him as maybe some of the Hondas did for Alex Palou. You can get into that all you want. We've been dealing with it in NASCAR for quite some time. Now it's rearing its head in IndyCar. But more notably, I do think that we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is just how much fans don't care about this race. Now, maybe some fans did. Maybe there were a lot of fans who were really excited for this, really thought it was a cool event. They think it's, pretty neat to have a race in a circuit like this. But, for the majority of fans watching that race on Sunday, it felt kind of weird. It felt kind of weirdly exclusive. It felt like this is not a race for you and me. This is a race for rich business executives. This is a race for rich, company executives that have a bunch of money that can come to this race and, maybe interact and have some cool, little team hospitality treats and everything like that. But for the average fan, this race wasn't for them. And if you're the average fan and you're asked to choose between a NASCAR Cup race at Homestead, which, like I said earlier, is a very popular track, or an IndyCar race in a gated community in Southern California, in a race that's essentially promoted and advertised to rich people, which one are you going to choose? I ask that question to IndyCar when we're really evaluating whether or not we're going to go back to this track. Is that the kind of message we want to send to our fans, that we are an exclusive club? Like, we're Formula One. We're going to take this American open wheel series that has been fan friendly for so long, and we're going to turn it into like this closed off Formula One type event where only the rich can afford seats. And even then, that's only the case for a handful of F1 races. There's a lot of other F1 races that are relatively affordable for what they are. I mean, for a while there, before the big F1 popularity boom here in the United States, Circuit of the Americas, the U.S. Grand Prix, was not a bad price. It was not a bad ticket. It was, you could get in there for a decent price. But you're now asking people to pay U.S. GP prices for subpar viewing experiences and subpar, on-track and at-track experiences. Maybe this new circuit that they're touting next year could help. But again, I'm not really sure. Now, the last thing I want to talk about this before we move on is the spat that was caught on tape between Devlin DeFrancesco and Scott McLaughlin. If you have not watched it, keep in mind that there's some pretty bad language in it, but Devlin DeFrancesco was not happy with Scott McLaughlin calling him out for taking him out on the opening laps. I mean, McLaughlin finished last. He has every right to be upset. I mean, McLaughlin had a weekend to forget, literally a weekend to forget, spun in qualifying, qualified poorly, qualified on the second to last row, and then got wrecked basically before the race even really got going. And he had every right to be mad with Devlin, but those two were going at it. And it makes me wonder, what kind of respect is Devlin going to get in the paddock going forward if that's how he's going to talk to someone like Scott McLaughlin? I personally have always kind of said, okay, obviously Devlin is in IndyCar because he brings money. I watched him when he was coming up through the ranks in FIA Formula 3. Wasn't really all that impressed. Wasn't really all that impressed in Indy Lights, Indy Next. Now he's in IndyCar. I'm still not really super impressed with what he's doing. But Ray Hall, Letterman, Lanigan needs a driver for that car. He brings the funding to support it. So you're probably going to get more fiery moments like this. But definitely some, at the very least, that added something extra to talk about that weren't ratings or weren't the broadcast cutting out or weren't the track, things like that. At the very least, that gave us some non-negative news to talk about, which is, hey, we've got drivers showing their displeasure with one another, which, not bad. But anyway, since Alex Palou has won back-to-back races to start the season, he has a 39-point lead over Pato O'Ward and a 41-point lead over Scott Dixon as the series looks to head to Long Beach here in a couple of weeks' time on April 13th for their next race. So it's going to be a couple of weeks off again for IndyCar. Again, this is one of those things where it's like, I kind of wish that they had races back-to-back-to-back. Start the season, kind of get that motivation going. Maybe you wouldn't have seen such a strong drop-off in viewership, but also would have also helped to have not put the race up against the NASCAR race in Homestead, because that's what we're going to talk about next. This was a race to watch, even though Kyle Larson, who was on pace for going 3 for 3, getting that trifecta, something that only has been done twice, and both times by Kyle Busch, and both times at Bristol in 2010 and 2017. Kyle Busch swept the Truck, the Xfinity, and the Cup races at one track. Kyle Larson was on pace to do that. He was entered in all 3 races as well. He won the Truck race, almost won the Xfinity race. On a late restart, Sam Mayer just got into the back of him, lifted his rear tires up off the ground, and he got a horrible restart. He couldn't recover. Justin Allgaier comes through, wins the Xfinity Dash for Cash, scores his second straight win in the Xfinity Series, and Larson had to settle for, I think, about 3rd or 4th or something. I think maybe 3rd. I couldn't remember off the top of my head, and maybe I should have written it down, but you know, he wasn't super thrilled with the way things played out there. Obviously, Sam Mayer probably got under his skin a little bit for the way he kind of pushed him going to the restart. It's always hard to restart when somebody's lifting your rear wheels up off the ground. So maybe Larson wasn't too happy about that. But in the Cup race, though, he made up for it. He caught and he passed his teammate, Alex Bowman, after Bowman got into the wall. Now, let me tell you something. Larson riding that high line is something. I think the thing that was most interesting to me was watching his onboard. You know, we've got the Max TNT. They've got those live onboard cameras that you can watch at any time now. And watching Kyle Larson's onboard camera, it just really, you have to watch it to really appreciate just how hard it is to run the wall like that for so long. At like 200 laps, more than 200 laps that he's doing, just to get around the fastest, just to be the fastest, just to be the fastest car. And you saw how hard it was for Alex Bowman to kind of try and take that line away and then keep it out of the wall. It's one of those things that just adds the extra level of attention and intensity to the race that you have to watch. And in general, a lot of people were saying, oh, this wasn't that great of a race. You know, there wasn't as much passing as maybe we were expecting. You know, even my podcast host, Josh Roller, of Racing with Rob and Roller podcast, which again you can download on your favorite podcast platforms wherever you want. He was saying something like, well, he didn't really like the race. He didn't really think that it was all that exciting. He felt like the gap between the midfield and the top cars is getting a little bit too wide, and maybe that kind of parity that the Gen 7 brought to NASCAR is kind of being eroded away. I don't know. I thought it was a good race. I thought you had some pretty interesting pit strategy going down there at the very end of the race. But to each their own. To each their own. I'm still looking forward to future mile-and-a-half races this year. And, of course, 2-mile oval races like at Michigan, which I've bought my tickets for already. That's how excited I am for Michigan this year, as I always am. But let's look ahead to Martinsville, because we've got Martinsville coming up this weekend. And that should be a fun race, it's at least in the trucks in the Xfinity Series. Now, again, we don't have the kind of 2-tire compounds like we had last year in the fall race coming to Martinsville. So who really knows what the Cup race is going to be like? It could go either way. It could be like as good as the fall race, or it could be not as entertaining like we've seen the last several short track races in the Gen 7 era. I'll be curious to see what really that car does. I think we could maybe get some better race. I think, depending on what tire Goodyear brings, if they bring a little bit of a softer tire, obviously it won't be a full alternate, but if they bring a little bit softer tire, can maybe get some of that tire wear going, maybe we'll see a little bit more passing, maybe we'll see a little bit more bump and runs going on here at Martinsville. I would hope that, at the very least. I would hope that would maybe happen. But again, we will just have to see. Maybe Ryan Blaney can come back, because he should have won that race at Homestead before his engine grenaded, quite literally, which was surprising for a lot of people to see. That doesn't usually happen very often in the Cup Series anymore, but it's always still spectacular to see an engine just completely blow up like that in a plume of smoke like we saw on Sunday. So that is it for this week's episode of the Racing Report. I really appreciate you guys for tuning in every single week. It makes my day when I see how many of you guys tune in and how many of you leave positive comments and even some constructive comments on YouTube as well. So I really, really, really appreciate that. And remember, if you do like the show, if you want to support it, please be sure to follow me on social media. That's RPEETERS33, RPeters33. And be sure to download the WTHR Plus app on your smart TV so you can watch brand new episodes of the Racing Report anytime, every time that they are released. Or remember, all you got to do is go over to that sports tab, scroll down a little bit, you'll get to the Racing Report. You'll find all of the most recent Racing Report episodes there. You can watch old ones. You can even watch our interview with Brayton Laster that we had a couple of weeks ago if you're a fan of the one pizza man, Greenwood's own Brayton Laster. So again, subscribe to WTHR, download that WTHR app Plus app on your smart TV, and follow me. And we will see you again next week for another episode of the Racing Report. So have a good one, everybody, and we will see you next time.